Let's talk further about these issues. We're going to talk about military relations and issues regarding the South China Sea.
And we're now joined by Robert Lawrence Kuhn. He's an expert on China businesses and also international corporate strategist and host of the television series Closer to Truth. So let's find out some truth over there.
Robert, why don't we start with the point that I made with Nathan, the differences between these two Washingtons, because most analysts would agree, I think, that President Xi's time in Seattle, Washington, very, very successful. Here in Washington, it seems sort of like the differences far more highlighted on the White House lawn today. Would you agree?
Well, that's part of the whole approach. President Xi started in Washington, in Seattle, with the business community. The business community, as we all know, have been China's most loyal supporters over the years as relations have gone this way and that. However, in the last couple of years, perhaps, the business community have had concerns, not just with the Chinese economy, but with certain issues about governance in China, in economic matters, various rules, anti-monopoly rules, favoritism to local companies. These kinds of perceptions have changed the business environment. But it is absolutely essential for all of these companies to do business in China, to do business well. The trade between the United States and China is extremely important to both countries. We are inextricably tied at the hip, as they say. It's impossible now for one country to do well and the other not. That's just cannot happen anymore. And so by President Xi going to the business community and laying out very warmly, very candidly, and addressing the issues of their concern, from the economy to the way that business is conducted, and giving an open, really an open door for business, that created an excellent environment there. Now, coming to Washington, D.C., look, if we didn't deal with the issues that are of concern, then that would be a bigger concern. In fact, that was the worry that some people, that we put some things under the table, we can't talk about them. That would be the worst condition. The fact that the two presidents can openly discuss issues of great tension, which starts with cybersecurity, and reach what many now believe to be a breakthrough, the first step in a critical regulation of a new area that the world is living in, is very exciting. And then even to talk about other issues regarding sovereignty and maritime issues, South China Sea allusions, to discuss openly that is excellent. So I'm actually very optimistic that they talked about the differences here in Washington as candidly as they did, reached some definite agreements, and set a good role model and a good trajectory going forward.
I see. It's wonderful to have open and also transparent attitudes coming both sides. After today's meeting, though, and the public announcement by the two presidents, does it signal a new road going forward for the two nations? What about when it comes to implementations of the words coming from these two presidents?
Sure, that's always the issue, and the presidents, both presidents, can set the agenda. And what's important is that both presidents have now put their personal credibility on the line, and these are not very low personality people. They're both very smart, very intense, and very committed. And they have now put their personal credibility on the line to make this work, to deal with the differences, like in cybersecurity, mill-to-mill cooperation, and areas that both countries are that cooperate together, in climate control, economic issues. With their credibility on the line, those below them are going to feel the pressure that they have to figure out how to make it work, or they're going to have to answer to the boss. So I think that is a very good sign going forward. I think President Xi has fulfilled very well sort of his two overarching ideas in people-to-people communication and diplomacy, public diplomacy, throughout this entire visit, as well as his view of this new kind of big power relationship, which has various facets of non-conflict, non-confrontation, mutual respect, and win-win cooperation. And that has been expressed in various ways. So I think by setting this overview, this aura that everybody has to work in, people will be pressured to try to make it work.
Robert, let's go back to people, because you just wrote a very interesting piece about your time in Muscatine, Iowa. Of course, President Xi very fond of this spot right in the middle of the United States, and it's not easy to get to, as you pointed out in your piece. Talk to us about the importance of this small town in Iowa.
Look, it's really a unique situation that occurs where the leader of the second largest economy in the world actually spent 2 nights and 3 days in the private home of an ordinary American as a young official. I haven't studied every country in the world, but I haven't heard of another case quite like that. And that gives him a very special relationship with ordinary Americans, the heartland, as we say, in Iowa. And it was really, it really, as much as I think I know about China, when I was there and I saw the reaction of the people that he had met 30 years ago, and then again 3 years ago when he visited as vice president, that sets a terrific a role model for everyone else to follow, because people-to-people communications as public diplomacy is a really critical part of President Xi's overarching strategy. You see it in the U.S., you see it in the Belt and Road Initiative, where there are various strategies, but always people-to-people communication is part of it. And you see it personified and exemplified with President Xi himself. And the good feelings that you see in Muscatine among the people about that very warm and rich experience has continued for many years. There's cities, sister cities, and economic exchanges on a very kind of grassroots level, but that's where it all has to start.
Well, from the sweet example from the heartland of America, but what about some strategic issues? There has been a lot of talk about strategic ambiguities between the two countries. Is it clearer, do you think, in your mind, sir, after today's announcement, the two are headed toward more chances of cooperation, or in fact, conflict, as differences still remain?
Sure, differences remain, but differences will always remain. And the important thing is that both presidents have stated the differences and made progress on all of them, some with specific action items, specific agreements, others with at least fully understanding the other's position and trying to manage those differences, such as military-to-military communications to avoid miscalculations along disputed areas in maritime matters. And so in each area, there has been progress. I can't think of one area, one sensitive area that has not been discussed, and I think that is a major contribution. And that sets an excellent agenda for going forward. Of course, there'll be issues on each of these. And in cyber, states don't control all their own citizens, some of whom are criminals, some of whom are doing it for financial gain or for just their ego or some commercial interest. So it's very difficult in that area. In the South China Sea and maritime areas, there are conflicting views, and very strongly so. But they can be managed, and oftentimes you let time pass, you manage it properly, you avoid confrontation, and sometime in the future, the issue probably will become less hot, because there'll be more important things that we as a world need to deal with. The fact that China and the U.S., with this important state visit that President Xi makes and the summit today, is a very strong mark in U.S.-China relations in a very positive manner, and it sets a standard for the world that says the two largest powers, and economically and soon militarily as well, are agreeing to work together to handle their differences and to cooperate for the common good of mankind across all spectrums. And that's an excellent message for the world to hear, because the world sure needs it.